John Ortberg, in his book Soul Keeping, begins with the following illustration, this following story. So he says, there once was a town high in the Alps that straddled the banks of a beautiful stream. The stream was fed by springs that were as old as the earth and as deep as the sea. The water was clear like crystal. Children laughed and played beside it. Swans and geese swam on it. You could see the rocks and the sand and the rainbow trout that swarmed at the bottom of the stream. High in the hills, far beyond anyone's sight, lived an old man who served as keeper of the springs. He had been hired so long ago now that no one could remember a time when he wasn't there. He would travel from one spring to another in the hills, removing branches or fallen leaves or debris that might pollute the water. But his work was unseen. One year, the town council decided they had better things to do with their money. No one supervised the old man anyway. They had roads to repair and taxes to collect and services to offer, and giving money to an unseen stream cleaner had become a luxury they could no longer afford. So the old man left his post. High in the mountains, the springs went untended. Twigs and branches and worse muddied the liquid flow. Mud and silt compacted the creek bed. Farm waste turned parts of the stream into stagnant bogs. For a time, no one in the village noticed. But after a while, the water was not the same. It began to look brackish. The swans flew away to live elsewhere. The water no longer had a crisp scent that drew children to play by it. Some people in the town began to grow ill. All noticed the loss of sparkling beauty that used to flow between the banks of the streams that fed the town. The life of the village depended on the stream, and the life of the stream depended on the keeper. The city council reconvened. The money was found, the old man was rehired, and after yet another time, the springs were cleaned, the stream was pure, children played again on its banks, illness was replaced by health, the swans came home, and the village came back to life. The life of a village depended on the health of the stream. The stream is your soul. You are the keeper. Now this morning we're beginning a series that isn't glamorous. It's not going to be your favorite series of all time if you're looking for something flashy and showy. In fact, it is all about the soul. We're just calling it Psalms of the Soul. You know, a lot of times in life we focus on self-care. Make sure that we feel good, make sure that we're taking our time, taking rest, and that's good, but very rarely, even as Christians, do we focus on soul care. We're combining two biblical subjects today that really are kind of this idea of, well, yeah, they're good, but I don't like to deal with them. The Psalms, and these cries of the heart written over a 1,000-year period from about 500 to 1500 BC, and we read them and we go, yeah, those are good, but we don't really want to deal with the fact that they really were cries of the heart, of people crying out to God. About 2/3 of the Psalms are actually laments, crying out in pain, crying out in despair to God and saying, I am just hurting. And my soul is hurting. And the soul, well, the soul is kind of difficult to define. It's this inner part of us that is really, in Christian theology, in our belief, the only part of us that lasts for eternity. Now, Plato's thought on this was that the soul was just reincarnated from being to being to being, and how you lived your life went to somebody else. But that's not at all what we believe. But the soul is really the most vital part of us. It's the only part of us that lasts. Our flesh will fail. Our life will fail, but the soul will last into eternity. Did you know that captains of airplanes and ships do not count their passengers by the number of people on board, but by the number of souls on board? The Old Testament, the word soul, this Hebrew nephes, is actually referred to about 900 different times. The very earliest, when God breathes breath into Adam. It's not actually translated as soul there. It's actually translated as soul in the ESV 222 different times. In the Old Testament, the word soul. Most often, it stands for the throat or the gullet, the breath, the exaltation of our bodies. But it is also used to represent the words that mean heart, inner person, that inner thing, that very core of who you are, where you kind of understand right and wrong, but so much more than that. In the New Testament, the Greek word for soul is psyche. It's used 101 times, 37 of those in the Gospels. Psyche, in its earliest origins, actually means the breath that gives life to a person. So we talk about the soul. Here's how I've chosen to define the soul for our purposes. The soul is the deepest part of man. It's the essence of life. It really is who we are. The deepest cry of the soul, though, is to be found whole. And yet, the soul can only be found whole in God alone. So let me ask you this. Is God where you turn when your soul feels empty? When it feels like it's not whole? You know, there's a lot of places in our world where we can turn. We can turn to sports. I mean, think about it. It's football season, which is great. But I'm not painting my chest and writing a big letter on myself. Maybe at one point. But not now. Because that doesn't fill my soul. Cheering for my team like that doesn't fill my soul. That's okay. What about, the music you listen to? There is actually soul music, right? And we have soul food, things that comfort us, make us feel good. And if that's the only place we're looking to make our soul feel whole, we're missing out. What about our cars that we drive, the vacations we take, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and retail therapy? All to make us feel whole. Yet, if the soul can be found whole in God alone, then are we turning to Him to find the deepest meaning of our soul? Dallas Willard said this: our soul is like a stream of water which gives strength, direction, and harmony to every other area of our life. When that stream is as it should be, we are constantly refreshed and exuberant in all we do, because our soul itself is then profusely rooted in the vastness of God and His kingdom, including nature. And all else within us is enlivened and directed by that stream. Therefore, we are in harmony with God, reality, and the rest of human nature, and nature at large. Our soul is like a stream of water which gives strength, direction, and harmony to every other area of our life. So, why the Psalms? Why specifically look at the soul in Psalms when we can look at the entire Bible? Why the Psalms? Well, I told you, in the Old Testament, the word is translated, the Hebrew word is translated as soul 222 times. 97 of those are in the Psalms. 97. And the Psalms are really these cries of the soul, and so it makes sense to take the next few weeks diving into them. Now today we're going to take a different approach than I normally would. Now you have probably realized about me over the past 9 months that I love exegetical preaching. I love opening up the Bible and going, okay, what does it say? What is it teaching us? Where do we go from here? Today is going to be a little bit different. It's more of a 30,000-foot view of the Psalms and really what the Psalms say of the soul. We're going to kind of fly through some of these. We're going to stay in the book of Psalms, in this collection of songs. We're going to stay there, but we're going to jump from psalm to psalm to psalm. For the most part, we're going to stay in order, so if you are not familiar with the Bible, it's easy to just kind of follow and go, oh, this number comes after this number. If you can count, you'll be okay today. But next week, for example, we're going to be looking at Psalm 42, which is really a cry of despair of the soul. Now, I would encourage you this week to read it and to get yourself familiar with it and what it says, because there are things that we all need to learn together, that as we dig into the deep work of the soul and understand that God is going to do things in us that we may not understand, we can realize that the soul can be in despair, but the soul can also praise God. And today, I just want to look at several different postures of the soul toward God that will help us all kind of have an idea of where will we go in the next few weeks, and also things for us to chew on and say, where am I? How healthy is my soul? So these 97 references, we're going to start in one of the most familiar Psalms of all time. Whether you are in the church or outside of the church, you probably know Psalm 23. If you have a Bible, or if you don't have a Bible, there's one in front of you. Take it home if you don't own one, but it's page 458, and we're going to work right through there. Psalm 23 talks about how God restores the soul. So what does it say? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. God restores the soul. There are times when our soul is absolutely worn out and tired because of the busyness of life. And Psalm 23 is an incredible reminder that in those moments of weariness, it is the Lord and not us who restores the soul. He's the shepherd that cares for his sheep, who leads us to places of rest. He provides our needs, and he restores the soul of man. So why is this particular psalm resonated throughout the years, throughout centuries with people? Why this one? Could it be that this psalm points out the deep need of man to find rest and restoration in God? You know, a lot of times our world tells us, run, 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 go, go, go. And God says, actually commands us to rest. What Sabbath is all about. And if it says that God restores the soul, he leads us beside quiet waters, still waters. He makes us lie down in green pastures. Doesn't that sound restful? And those are the moments when God restores the soul. And we find in Psalm 23 that the deepest need of the soul is found in God. That rest is found in him. And when we find him and we find that rest, then we are restored to be more like who he has created us to be. The deepest cry of the soul is to be found whole. And part of being found whole is to find rest in God alone. Now, I promise you, we're not going to walk through every single psalm, but the next two, we are going to look at Psalm 24 and 25. So, it's easy. You don't have to turn anywhere. But Psalm 24, we learn this thing. We learn that the soul can cry out to that which is false. The soul can turn to what is false. Psalm 24, 3 through 6. If you grew up in the 90s or 2000s or lived in that area, then you probably sang this. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? And who shall stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift his soul up to what is false, to an idol, does not swear deceitfully. He will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Give us clean hands, give us pure hearts. This idea that the soul has the capability, at its very essence, is actually possible of being lifted up to something other than the God who saves us. That we can turn to what is false. And the Psalms, these come from David's words, and what he's describing is this ascending, and here or someplace else, but ascending to this place of worship before the Lord, of standing before him, and understanding that we have clean hands, pure hearts, we're not lifting up our soul to what is false, then we can worship God fully. He almost describes it as if it's impossible to receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from God if we are looking to other things. Saying, don't turn your soul to what is false. Don't swear deceitfully. You know, there are times when we lift our souls up to human beings to save us. We hunger and thirst for righteousness, but we don't know where to find it, and we don't seek God for that hunger, and so we look to other people. We look for our soul to be created by the hopes of people who are fallible, who are temporary, instead of lifting our soul up to God who is eternal. You know, there are times also when we shun purity and we shun discretion and we say, whatever I want to do counts. You know, when I have lifted my soul up to what is false, in different times when I've said, you know what, I want this more than I want God, I've not found the blessing of the Lord. I've actually found it difficult to come into a place and worship him because my soul is not being lifted up to him in any other instance. And so it's very difficult to honestly worship God, to come before his courts with a clean hands and pure heart and say, here I am. The blessing of worship comes when we're not swearing by what is false, when we're not trying to cover up things, when we're simply honoring him because of who he is. To lift our eyes and our soul up to the Lord, who is eternal, and not the things of man which are temporal, and that false aspect of who he is. Psalm 25 tells us something different. It tells us that our soul can be lifted up to God. Psalm 25, 1 through 5. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. Oh my God, in you I trust. Let me not be put to shame. Let not my enemies exult over me. Indeed, none who wait for you shall be put to shame. They shall be ashamed who are wantonly treacherous. I don't think I ever say the word wantonly in anything. Make me to know your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me. For you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long. Do you see the contrast here? Like one, we're lifting our souls up what is false and swearing by what is deceitful and trying to seek our own way. And in this instance here, we're lifting up our soul to the God of truth and asking him to teach us his way so that we might understand he's the God of our salvation in order to follow him. You know, once again, David is crying out, and he's showing the benefit of trusting the Lord first, and trusting that he will not be put to shame by his enemies. Maybe that's why Psalm 23 says, you set a table before me, in my presence before my enemies. You set this table, that you wouldn't be ashamed here. In lifting up his soul to the Lord, he understands that God will make known his ways, and God will lead in truth. David is realizing his dependence on God and his need to continue growing in the Lord. But he also sees the benefit of his salvation. And he promises to wait for the Lord. You know, waiting for the Lord comes easily to a soul who is focused on him. There's a lot of times we want to run ahead. We want to go to places where God is not leading because we have a hard time waiting. Waiting on the Lord is easy when our soul is focused on him. The contrast of the posture of 24 and 25 is so fascinating. Are we people who are swearing by what is false, lifting up our souls to idols and what is false, and seeking whatever pleasure we can get from the world? Or are we simply seeking God and lifting our souls up to him to seek his truth? When we lift our souls to the Lord, we learn truth. We remind ourselves of the goodness of the salvation that comes in Jesus. So are you lifting your soul to what is false, or are you lifting it to the Lord who is true? Psalm 31 is our next thing that we're going to see. And in here we see that the soul can know distress. I will rejoice, verse 7, and be glad in your steadfast love, because you have seen my affliction. You have known the distress of my soul. You've not delivered me into the hand of the enemy. You have set my feet in a broad place. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief, my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength fails because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away. If there are some who believe that David may have dealt with some depression in his life, this song kind of shows me that might be true. But the beauty of this, even in that distress, and I think a lot of us would be lying to ourselves if we said, I've never been distressed or worried about anything in my life. And David is saying, even in that distress, there is a reminder that God is good. I mean, verse 7, I will rejoice and be glad in your steadfast love. Why? Because you've seen my affliction. You've known the distress of my soul. Even in that, you are not alone. Even when it seems dark. Darkness isn't necessarily a bad thing all the time. You're not alone. Even in that despair, you're not alone, because God still sees the affliction of your soul. Even when it seems that there is no hope, there's always hope. And if you're one who knows the constant distress of the soul, that constant anxiety, that constant worry, and you find yourself resting in that place day to day, then there are people who would love to help you and talk with you through that. But you can also be reminded that in those moments you are not alone. That there is hope, that God sees you in that. And there are simply some things that we cannot do alone, no matter how hard we try. We need each other to walk through that. We need a community of believers who are simply reminding us of the goodness of God. Not putting us down, but helping us see just how good God is. There's hope even in the midst of distress and despair. Psalm 33. The Lord delivers the soul from death. Now, I love this. This is so cool to me because it shows me that God is watching. He loves me. Verse 18, behold, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him. Who is his eye on? Those who fear him, those who are following him. On those who hope in his steadfast love. That's who God is watching. Those who hope in his steadfast love. That he may do what? That he may deliver their soul from death and keep them alive in famine. You fear the Lord, his eye is watching you, that he might deliver your soul from death. Our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and our shield, for our heart is glad in him. Because we trust in his holy name, let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us, even as we hope on you. Now, there's really two things in here, and I had to kind of decide which one was I going to go with. The Lord delivers the soul from death. Like, he cares about us. Did you notice it's God alone who saves? How many times have you tried to rescue yourself or save somebody else from the trouble that they might need to go through because you want to fix things? But it's the Lord alone who saves the soul. The Lord alone who delivers us. How amazing, though, to think that God is watching over us, looking for those opportunities to save us, to save the soul from death. Not only that, but because he saves us, then our soul waits for the Lord, who is our help, verse 20, and our shield. He is our help. He's our shield. He's our protector, who delivers us. There's really so much packed in these verses that we could spend a lifetime on it. And so much that we can be overwhelmed by the goodness of God in this, that he cares for us. And because of that, then the psalmist here describes our soul as waiting for the Lord. Now, how many of you are good at waiting? Patience. The internet is running slow. Your phone won't come up as quickly as you want it to. The apps won't open. Yeah, we're terrible at waiting. And yet, we are to wait on the Lord, who is our help and our shield, instead of running forward and thinking we can answer everything ourselves. Waiting is hard. But in the waiting, there are things that God teaches us that we can only learn in that time. Psalm 84. Skip forward several pages. We learn, once again, another song from the 90s and 2000s, that the soul longs for the courts of the Lord. Verse 1, how lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, yes, faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and flesh sing for joy to the living God. Isn't that beautiful? And it's even more beautiful with all those pages. I love that. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, yes, faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and flesh sing out for joy to the living God. When the soul is focused on the Lord, not lifted up to an idol, but looking for the truth of God and honoring him, then it follows him. Let me ask you this. Is it true of you that your soul longs for the courts of the Lord? I think the more I get to know him, the more time I spend in his word, the more I simply long for him. But I don't know if I can describe it so much as the psalmist does here. He says, not only does my soul long for the Lord, but I'm longing for him so much that I'm exhausting my body and fainting as I wait for the courts of the Lord, as I long for the courts of the Lord. Do we long for God so much that we are exhausting our resources to find him? That we are spending so much time in his word that we know him well. Not being legalistic and saying, I have to spend this much, or my quiet time will be 15 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, but just longing for his word. And I found myself in that position this week. I was doing some things here at church, and I felt this anxiety that I never felt in my life. I had no clue where it came from. It was just this overwhelming, like, I don't know what is going on right now, but I can tell you in that moment, the only thing I wanted was to sit down and read my Bible. That was it. Like, I longed for God in those moments. Like, I couldn't look for anything else. And he was all I could do to get done what I was doing and to run to him. And I really wish I would have just dropped what I was doing and ran there. Does your soul long for the courts of the Lord like that? Long for his presence, long to be in front of him. If the deepest cry of the soul is to be with God, When we live in a relationship with him, then our soul cries out for his kingdom above all things, for his courts above all. He's the one we should want and long for most. Psalm 119 shows us something really interesting. Now, Psalm 119, if you've ever read it, is really about the precepts of the Lord and the word of the Lord and his goodness in his law. And really what we see here is that the soul longs for the word of God. Not only does it long for the word of God, it longs for his rules. Okay? Psalm 119:20. My soul is consumed with longing for your rules at all times. Well, that's something we all love. I'm longing for the rules of God. Verse 28, my soul melts away for sorrow. Strengthen me according to your word. Verse 81, my soul longs for your salvation. I hope in your word. You know, when the soul is focused on the Lord, not lifted up to an idol, not seeking pleasure, not seeking acceptance in everything else, it longs for the good things of the Lord. And it longs to follow his rules and his salvation. The soul actually longs for the word of the Lord. Now, it may seem kind of an odd thing to find freedom in rules. Because we talk about, I want to be free, I want to do my own thing, but really, rules and the law of the Lord, his precepts, drive us. My soul longs for the rules of the Lord. Have you ever played a new game, board game, card game, anything, and just set the box out, say a board game, you set it out, and you just put the pieces out and you started playing without reading the rules? You know, there's a card game called Now that I can't stand because they don't tell you the rules beforehand. Like, I've never played it because I can't function in that. I can't go and sit down at a table with people playing cards and go, oh, I get this, let me do it. Because they'll make fun of you if you don't know the rules, and they'll penalize you for not knowing the rules, but nobody can tell you the rules. I would rather sit down, open the box, read the rules, understand the game, and then play by the rules so that I know the parameters of what is happening around me. You know, in Monopoly, you break some rules sometimes, and your family doesn't want to play the game with you anymore. That's a little or you follow. Why is it that when we play a board game, we play a game online, we play a card game with our friends, that we want to know the rules? And yet when it comes to our faith, we are so apt to forget the rules of the Lord. We would rather follow what the world says than let our soul actually long for what is true and good and beautiful and for the parameters that God has set for us. Your soul is the only eternal part of you. The psalmist is saying, my soul longs for the word of the Lord. Do our souls long for the same thing? You know, personally, I find more freedom, more exhilaration in the boundaries set around me than I do in simply having freedom to go and do whatever I want. Because when that's the case, I find that I often don't know what to do. Part of our freedom is giving ourselves to following the word of the Lord. To longing for his word so much because we know that it is true and it is good and it will lead us where we need to go. Psalm 139 tells us that even in that, the soul knows the wonders of the Lord. Psalm 139:14. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. You've probably heard this or seen it on a t-shirt, you know. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And let that just sink in for a moment. You are fearfully and wonderfully made by the creator of the universe. He is actually the author of your soul. Contrary to the book, where I'm the captain of my ship, I'm the captain of my soul, that whole idea. No. You have a God who loves you and authored your life and your soul fearfully and wonderfully, created you just like you are. And we say this all the time. We're a group of imperfect people. We are. None of us are perfect, but we were created by a perfect God, fearfully and wonderfully. And that's the beauty of it, is that we're all trying to figure this out together. For you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And not only that, but according to the psalmist here, he cries out and he says, my soul knows that your works are wonderful. And not only does he say, my soul knows your works are wonderful, he knows it very well. That descriptive word is important. It's intimate. Knows it very well. And I believe in the heart of every human being, whether we've chosen to follow the Lord or not, there's a wonder in the way that we're made. And there's a wonder about the beauty and majesty of God. For the only time today, I want you to actually go backwards to Psalm 103. This is the last psalm we're going to look at. But we see something here. That the soul blesses the Lord. It's this idea of remembering who He is, of crying out to Him for His goodness, and blessing the Lord. It comes from deep within us to honor God because of who He is. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Verse 1. And all that is within me, bless His holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all His benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good, that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Bless the Lord, O my soul, because He's good. Bless His holy name, because His benefits are incredible. Because He forgives my sin. Because He heals the disease. Because He has redeemed my life from the pit. You know, the cry of the soul is a cry of blessing. Honoring God because of what He has done. Remembering who it is that redeems and crowns us with steadfast love instead of us trying to do it ourselves. So many times we focus on the goodness of ourselves. Putting the goodness on God, blessing Him for who He is, reminds us just who is in charge. Just who we get to follow. The soul blesses the Lord. You know, through this quick look at Psalms, we find that the soul finds restoration and hope and salvation in God. The soul lifted up to what is false and idle is unable really to receive the full blessing of God. In fact, we're unable to come to Him honestly. We've also seen that the soul craves the rule and the word of the Lord so that it might be found whole in Him. At the end of it all, if that's really what the soul craves, if the soul craves to be made whole. I said this earlier. The soul is the deepest part of man. It's the essence of life. The deepest cry of the soul is to be found whole. But the soul can be found whole in God alone. In despair, the soul craves to be made whole. In blessing the Lord, the soul craves to be made whole. In all of our searching and all of our wandering, the soul really is just looking to be whole. Today's a snapshot. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to look at very specific aspects of the soul. If you want to write these down, I'm going to tell you where we're going. Next week, we're going to look at Psalm 42, which is a cry of despair. Finding that the soul is crying out, a reminder to hope. Why so downcast, O my soul? Put your hope in God. In 2 weeks, we're going to look at Psalm 119, 129 through 136. We're going to look at how the soul really does long for the word of the Lord. How we can put that into practice in our own lives. In 3 weeks, we're going to look at Psalm 130, where we'll see what it is for the soul to wait and to be redeemed. And the final week of this series, at 4 weeks from now, we're going to look at Psalm 66, where we explore what it means for the soul to declare what the Lord has done for us. For our mouth, really, to declare what the Lord has done. Beginning this, I read that John Wright story, and it said that the stream is your soul. You are the keeper. Now, I have been just under this overwhelming weight today of the importance of all of us understanding that we have to care for ourselves. I think in order for the church to be healthy, we each individually have to be healthy. And in order for us to go from this place and to tell people about Jesus, we have to first understand what He's done for us. And the cry of our soul has to be found in Him. And so I know the next few weeks are not going to be glamorous. They might be tough, actually. But here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask that you stick with it. That maybe this week read Psalm 42 over and over and over. Ask God to teach you from His Word. Read it out loud. Spend time with Him. Ask Him to find those deep places of the soul that may need to be aligned with His Word, to unite your heart, your life, to follow Him, and to dig in. I can promise this. As you dig into the deep work of restoring a soul or asking God to restore your soul, the enemy will attack. It's just going to happen. He doesn't like it. We start talking about those things that help us grow deeper in God. The enemy does not like that, and he will attack. Surround yourself with people who will pray for you. Maybe daily pray the Lord's Prayer, where God will protect you from temptation. I just pray. My dream as a church is that we would be healthy so we can win the lost. You know, every church has this tendency to complain, to grumble. Things aren't like they once were. I don't like it anymore. It's hard for me to follow. I get it. But our soul needs to be whole in God. But if we're grumbling about what's happening here, and we're not focusing in on God and who He is, how in the world are we reaching the world out there? Our purpose is to know God and to make Him known. Here we say to meet people where they live, meet others where they live, so they can know Jesus, to connect Christ to where you live, and that's really what we have to do. And right now, we need to connect Christ to the deepest part of our soul so that we can be whole, that we can live a life that the world says they have something different and I want to be a part of. My prayer for our church is that we would honor God in that and follow Him, and then it would be time for us to take our stand. And the more time we spend in Word, we'll realize the less ground the enemy can take. It's time for each of us to take a deep look at the soul and simply go the places where God is calling us to go. To find that true health in Him, to find that full restoration in Him, so that we can tell the world more about who He is. The deepest cry of the soul is to be found whole. But the soul can only be found whole with God. Father, I pray, I ask us, I just simply want you to go before us. God, may all of our excuses for following you be, for not following you be put to the side. May all of our excuses for not going deep be taken away. And God, I pray that you would protect us from the enemy for the next few weeks. That we would be people who want to know you more than anything else. God, help us to work on our souls. Help us as a church to be healthy so that we can honor you more and more. God, I pray today that even as we sit in these moments, as we sing a song that's asking you to take us into deep waters and places we may not want to go, they would sing these words honestly. That we would follow where you want us to go, God, and simply live lives for you. God, it's in your name I pray. Amen. Here's what I'm going to do this morning. We're going to stand, we're going to sing. I would ask you, if there's something resting in your soul right now, find somebody next to you and just say, will you pray for me as we sing? Or I'll be up here to pray. We have elders around the room. Just somebody to pray for you and say, I am with you in this. If you want to talk about what a relationship with Jesus looks like, come find me either up here or find me at the end of the service, and let's talk about what that looks like. Let's sing, and I'll have a couple things, and we'll pray together in a little bit.